I've seen the dark universe yawning, where the black planets roll without aim, where they roll in their horror unheeded, without knowledge or luster or name.
In 2016, I moved to Marietta, Georgia. Up until that point, I had always been interested in the paranormal, though I had few experiences that one would call unexplainable. Shortly after I moved into my new place, however, I began to have strange feelings, particularly when I was alone. When I was alone, I could feel a presence in my apartment. At first, I would shrug it off, but it persisted for months. I became extremely depressed. I began to lose weight extremely quickly, and I could never sleep for fear of this presence. As I would lay in bed at night, I could feel something in my room waiting for me to go to sleep. I had this terrible feeling in my stomach that I knew what was going to happen after I went to sleep, but I couldn't put it into words. One night, I had a particularly rough night. The terrible feeling was worse than ever. I could not put it out of my mind. My bathroom was across the hall from my bedroom, and my bedroom door was closed. I desperately had to pee, but I knew there was something standing in the hall. I knew it in my bones. I decided to confront it, to get up and open the door and face whatever it was. I got up and walked over to the door and grabbed the handle. As soon as I did, a vivid image flashed in my mind. I could see a tall figure in a robe on the other side of the door. He had a head like a mantis and wore red robes. Along with this image came a clear message. This is what you will see. To avoid being frightened, go to sleep. I backed away slowly, laid down in bed and stayed up all night long. Around this time, I also became obsessed with exercise. One day on my daily run, my knee began to hurt terribly. I ended up limping back to my car because of the pain. When I woke up the next day, I had 4 tiny pinpricks in a row down my knee and no longer felt any pain. This eventually spurred me to research abductions. I was shocked by how similar some stories were. I'm convinced that is what happened to me. When I moved out of the apartment after a couple of years, once I could finally afford it, I felt like the presence left me. I occasionally have trouble sleeping, but I feel like they leave me alone now. Ever since this time, I have never felt like the same person. I would really love to hear what you guys think. It's hard not to feel crazy.
I remember a very unusual, extremely vivid dream that happened to me when I was young. I'm not sure if this was a result of my brain waking up from a deep sleep/dream and also possibly hallucinating. But I remember a certain part of this experience being very vivid. It's a bit fuzzy trying to remember since this was so long ago and I was so young. Maybe it's a repressed memory. I was sleeping in my mother's room and had woken up in the middle of the night. I was laying on the side opposite to the direction of the bed. Still on my side, I got up a bit to look at the door of the room that was wide open. I heard the light switch in the hallway next to the door and opposite to the wall I was facing turn on. I then saw 3 identical grayish beings, around 3 to 4 foot tall, walk to the door. They were slightly taller to where the door handle was, and I remember they were lanky, and their heads being proportionally larger than the rest of their bodies. They stepped to where the door frame was, and I saw a red light come on, and then scanned the entire room. After scanning me in the room, they walked away with the hallway lights still on. I laid upright in bed frozen, not being able to move. From shock or fear? What was that scanning? All I remember was not being able to move momentarily somewhere around 15 to 30 seconds. Eventually I was able to, and I got up to search and found nothing inside the house. After that, I was obviously awake for the rest of the night and spent it sitting in the living room and on the bed staring at the door. This could all be BS, and a result of me hallucinating from waking up from a deep sleep or something. But my God, that red light was so vivid. Like, you can definitely tell when a flashlight or light is shining on you. You squint, it's bright. Also, my eyes water a lot trying to recall this event, and I really don't know what's up with that. I still think maybe it's a repressed memory. The more I look into this, the more I feel compelled to maybe try hypnosis to get an answer. I want to know whether or not this was a result of my child brain imagining something that's not there, or something weird and otherworldly occurred that night.
Not sure if I've ever really posted about this before. I actually didn't make any sort of connection until I got into the UFO/alien thing. As a kid, I used to have all sorts of crazy dreams and nightmares. From a clown visiting me, phasing through the walls, grabbing me and turning everything to colors, to a large praying mantis taking me away to a white house. I remember it taking me to this white house that had a white room, and I remember laying down on a white bed, completely still. I remember seeing this praying mantis above me from behind, phasing in through whatever barrier was behind the bed, and just looking down at me. It had white skin, and it looked just like a mantid. The long arms, skinny torso, and the mantid head with black eyes at the end. I never really thought anything of it until these past couple of years, when I started getting deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of this phenomenon. I'd like to know if anyone has ever seen or heard of something like this. Was it really just a dream? Or is there more to this? Please let me know. Thanks.
My first abduction was when I was 17 years old and I was about to go to sleep. A blue light triangulated through my closed bedroom window and pinpointed to my location. Two small grays just appeared, one facing me and one headed towards the bedroom door. I can telepathically feel they're shocked I'm awake. I try to jump out of bed like anyone would, but I was frozen. Half my body in midair. They floated with me through the closed window, and that's where I blacked out. I went for regressive hypnosis to try to suss out and get some more details about this one. For over 2.5 hours, we attacked it from every single angle, but each time, I would be reduced to crying like a little baby, whispering in sheer terror. My hypnotherapist rightly said, "I don't think exploring this is really going to help you." The second abduction, 18 years old. Awake with a jolt on board what I assumed to be a craft. I'm lying down, head slightly elevated. To my right is a tall gray. Telepathically, I can tell that he is surprised I woke up again, and that I'm not supposed to be. In his hand is a long and thin silver rod. It looks like one of those old metal pointers teachers would use. Diffuse white light everywhere with no obvious source. Completely paralyzed and unable to move. I'm a little less terrified than the first time, but definitely still frightened. The gray communicates that he's gonna go put something in my ear and it won't hurt. The rod goes pretty deep into my right ear and I cannot feel a thing. Another communication that I will go to sleep or something to that effect. I then black out. The next morning my body is electric and it's all I can think about. I get out of bed and go to the bathroom, which is next to my bedroom. Put my finger to see if I can feel anything, but I can't. There is a bit of dried blood on my finger when I remove it though. It would seem that anything as advanced as an extraterrestrial race visiting Earth would definitely have the technology to not leave blood after an implant. But a surprising number of cases contactees report finding dried blood in their nose or ears after an implant. Of course, implants in other part of the bodies also leave visible marks in most cases. The phenomenon does not make sense when we analyze the details, however, from an anthropomorphic point of view. The third abduction happened 7 years ago while visiting my parents in Washington State, which is where the previous abductions occurred, albeit in a different city. I wake once again on board what I assume is that same craft. Across from me is my infant son, just about 1 year old and smiling. He is sitting what I can only describe as a futuristic high chair. It's molded to fit his body, white and very smooth. It's raised up so that he's eye level with me. There is some telepathic acknowledgement from him to me, and between us is a purple sphere, around the size of a basketball. Inside this globe is a swirling purple mass of what looks like a gas or possibly a liquid, a bit like time-lapse images of the sun, but smooth in real time. To my right is a tall gray. He communicates to me something like, "If you agree to this procedure, you and your son will understand each other's souls." I have no idea what the gray is talking about and just stare at him. Apparently this is an agreement, as the gray does something to the sphere, but not physically. How I understand that he did something, I can't really explain. But immediately after this, my son and I shoot down from Earth's orbit through an atmosphere, and then cloud cover, and then into the roof in a blink of an eye. But I'm still able to see it all flash by. As we arrive back in the house, and oddly my son is sitting upright on my lap, still smiling. I put him back to bed and then go back to sleep myself. My last experience is an actual sighting. I was driving along the Highway 101 in Washington State after dark. I think it was between 1994 and 1999. It's a wide range, but a lot of weird stuff happened to me on that highway during those years. At a certain spot, there was a farming supply store with a large field behind it. The store always kept the front lights on at night. On this occasion, while driving by, I saw a typical silver saucer floating behind the store. I'm awful at measurements, but it was maybe 20 feet or so off the ground, as long and high as a bus at its largest points. It's also important to note that I didn't spot the craft and then suddenly pull over. In some way, I was compelled to slow down as I approached the store. I pulled up behind it, and there it was. In fact, during that 5-year span, I was compelled quite often to make sudden nighttime 2.5-hour drives on the highway. I'll spare everyone the autobiography of odd stuff. I only remember pulling up, seeing the craft, opening my car door, and then standing up outside my vehicle. The next memory is waking up the following morning at my destination. This is just another one of those odd incidents where a person sees something unbelievable, remembers it fully from the time of, yet fails to tell anyone about it or even truly accepts what's happened until later on. I had a childhood full of the strange things that are markers for abductions, the kind of stuff most of us are already aware of. So, I'll just refrain from listing them.
So, last week I was browsing Reddit, and I came across a Redditor's post regarding hypnotherapy. I messaged them and told them my story, and it was a done deal. I'll start this off by saying this was nothing like what I expected a hypno-regression to be. And the things I revisited, the things I remembered that happened to me, I found out were very traumatic to me as a kid. Even revisiting it now gave me a severe panic attack. But the hypno-regression therapist worked his magic, and while working through the hyperventilation, I was able to revisit my abduction as a kid and get the answers I needed. However, I am now filled with more questions than answered. I won't share his hypno-regression methodology here because he politely asked me not to, and I will respect his wishes. But he worked his magic, and I was soon back to where it all started. I saw myself, at 6 years old, being escorted down this very cold, dark, metallic hallway. I was able to look down, saw that I was naked and saw my own legs. But they were my legs as a kid. There were also large grey-coloured pipes that ran the length of the wall in this hallway. And towards the end of the hall, there were people walking back and forth down an adjacent hallway. As I approached them, I passed by a window to my right, and as I looked out, I could see the blackness of space and the earth below me to the left. When I got to this group of people, I started to notice they weren't quite human people. They looked very similar, but there was just something about their face that I just knew they weren't human. They were going about their business, holding some sort of pads, whether they were clipboards, tablets, or whatever. They looked up at me with a shocked, angry, scared expression and said,
"Hey, you're not supposed to be here."
That's when I was escorted back by these two smaller people about my height. They took me to a large room where I saw two more of these smaller people and a large praying mantis-looking person. As I approached the room, the smaller people turned to look at me, and I saw the mantis going about its business, arranging tools, screens, and other things, like how a doctor would set up before an operation, just getting everything together. The smaller beings took me inside the room and did all kinds of tests on me. They handed me a small black box, and when I opened it, a bunch of images, screens, charts, numbers, videos, and all kinds of things were flying out of it, like a fountain of light. I had no idea what any of it meant, and these two small people were staring at me the whole time. I can see their faces in perfect detail. I swear they looked just like little kids. Small, flat, circular head structure, large, circular golden yellow and brown eyes, with a small circle of white around the eye. They had large brows and no hair, small jaws, small mouths, and they had small indents behind their jaw, near the side of their head that looked like ear holes or something. Their skin was tinted a leathery grey. It was sand, light brown coloured, almost like a cashew. They were just watching me, studying me. This whole time, the hypnoaggression therapist was guiding me through this experience, asking me questions about what I see, what I'm doing, and was also having me ask them questions, the typical, who are you, what is your purpose, etc. To my surprise, they were able to answer me. This started giving me more and more panic, because this whole time I can feel my body shaking, and I knew I was hyperventilating. I was scared out of my mind, but the therapist did a good job of bringing me back down when things got too intense. This is a copy and paste of some of his notes he graciously transcribed for me. In a cold place with pipes on the wall. Floor is rough. I'm not me. Just see my legs. No others in this room. There's a window, but I just see black. There's no doors, but a hallway. There are other people here, moving back and forth with clipboards. They say I'm not supposed to be here. They're surprised and angry. More hallways, light on the walls, ceilings and floors. They look human, but they're not, and they've been studying us a long time. The humanoids, or the mantids, they come from a pink tropical planet. They study science, light technology. They're teachers, neither good nor bad. Why was I chosen for visitation? It was part of a plan. What have you forgotten? Everything. More questions. Do the beings see who you are now? Yes. Do they accept you? Yes. Have them show you a place within this place that you do not know about. They're showing me a wall. It's fuzzy, grey and blank. I see lights in different colours. The mantis being is standing there with many small beings. Communication with mantis.
You know them as many names.
Little beings answer. We're just servants. Mantis.
This is their job. They have no name. They are considered a tool. Somebody else is in charge.
Who?
Unclear. Can't see.
The humanoid beings gave me a box. It's filled with memories, images. It's a puzzle. I'm really confused. It's a test. They're looking at me. At this point, your hands began to move on their own, and it appeared that you were holding a box. Your face was very distraught, and you were breathing rapidly. I suggested to you to take the memories in the box and form new realities with them. This was done to mitigate any trauma and bring your breathing to a normal rate. At this point, this place became a safe place, and we moved on to a place in nature, and I brought you back up. Throughout the experience, your breathing was very heavy, and you were having a very difficult time, but I was able to soothe you to a better place. The box was the most difficulty you had. End transcription. I left some things out of the experience that are a little personal, but if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And if anyone has had a similar experience, please let me know. After 15 years of thinking that it was just a dream, this experience has shattered my reality. I don't know what to think anymore. I look up at the night sky now, wondering where this craft is at, and if these beings are still watching me.
So for some reason this came up in my memory recently, and I feel like I should share it. When I was no more than 5 years old, I was visiting my grandparents' house in Maine. My cousins and I were in the backyard camping in my uncle's pop-up camper for the night after a nice bonfire. I woke up for some reason in the middle of the night and was compelled to go outside the camper. There was very little light outside, no stars, no moon. It just felt very dark. I remember panicking because I couldn't find my way back to the camper because of how dark it was. No more than a minute or so of me getting scared, my eyes adjusted. I then noticed 3 shapes of 3 men, like little men about my height at the time. They were bald and had huge heads. I couldn't make out any of the features, but I knew they were there. The outside was not actually outside. I don't really know how to explain it. It was like a gymnasium or something. Like a huge room that was completely dark. No echoes, no reverb. It's kind of vague, but I remember them showing me these impossible objects. I can't even begin to describe what they were, or really what they did. They were just some odd sort of trinkets, like physically impossible to describe. They allowed me to play with one. It was like a sphere tube that had inside and the outside switching. I don't know, it doesn't come close to what it was, but it's the best I can do to describe it. It was absolutely mesmerizing. The object itself seemed to have mass and was definitely substantial, but it literally made no sense physically. I wanted to keep playing with it, but they wanted it back, and then helped me back to the camper. Keep in mind, I might be remembering this wrong, but the things that stand out to me are the objects and those little dudes. At no time did I feel as if they were trying to harm me, but I also felt like they were adults, like they knew me better than me, and would keep me safe. It felt like they had authority or something. I awoke the next morning remembering all of it. I tried to tell my family, but they just blew it off as my imagination. To this day, I still remember it. I cannot tell if I was just dreaming, or if maybe I went to a different universe. Or maybe abducted. What are your thoughts?
Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.